You should be able to. There we go.
All right, guys, so I got to tell you, this class, it's going to be unlike a lot of the classes that we've done before, because this class has been a journey. And I think we've been trying to solve this for about, I don't know, a month and a half now. And I've been kind of in a situation where it's really bothered me. And I almost like, it's to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't even want to teach anymore unless we solve this problem. I feel like, a lot of the things that we do is we inspire, we motivate, and I feel like I'm letting you down. I feel like I just want to fucking take a match and light Inspiration Hall and just burn that shit down, because I really want to get to the core of what it takes for you to be successful. And it's so passionate about this. I want you guys to win on such a high level that, like, Bobby and I basically have been working on this for, like I said, a month and a half. Like this morning, we woke up early and we're sitting by the poolside here in Naples, Florida, and we're like, we got to get this right. We've got to get this right. And you know what's funny about these most important things in life is that they're not that hard, right? So I want you to I need you to really open your heart and pay attention, because you might fall into the trap of thinking you know the answer to this, right? And maybe you even do. But I need you to pay attention, because this is a soul search that can make the difference in not only your personal life, your financial life, your love life, and everything you cherish. So I hope that you sit back and you take notes and you really take some time after this to really kind of just put into plan. And there's only about 5 or 6 slides. So Bobby and I are going to kind of go through and we're going to talk this through, because this is something, unfortunately, it doesn't get talked about. And if it does get talked about, it gets talked in the wrong manner. Your discipline sucks, right? And it's not your fault. Bobby, you're going to let people in if we go along, right?
Yeah.
All right. So just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you think you have a discipline problem in any part of your life. All right. I don't see everybody's hands up. Some of you guys are liars, or some of you guys aren't paying attention. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe you need to start putting some discipline in your learning, because from the learning, you start earning, right? So that's the first part of this, is how do we get this discipline? And we see these guys like David Goggins who create this image of discipline. And I got to tell you, it sucks. Like, I don't know if I want to dread my body through some of the pain that this guy does. So I kind of push it away. And I think to myself, it's like, discipline in general, in my infancy of this thought, kind of sucks. So I don't blame you. It's not your fault. So in talking with Bobby was like, well, where does this infancy of discipline start? Where do we start? Where does that start?
So first off, so you guys are in the live room right now, I'd love for the big screen to actually be whoever the speaker is, and actually the slide to be the small screen. So if Marissa's in there, change that view there, because I think it's going to have more impact if you guys see who's speaking on the big screen. But, Gil and I were talking this morning, and I was like, obviously we have some discipline in some things and we don't have it in other things. And we started to kind of go back in time and start thinking like how did our discipline start for certain things? I remember telling Gil a story about how when I first started working out, and, it wasn't really my choice, right? Like it was a coach who told me, hey, you need to come in the weight room. If you're going to play, hey, I coach at the high school. I need you to come here while you're in 8th grade and start working out in the gym. And it wasn't something I wanted to do. It was just kind of like, hey, what option do I have? My coach is telling me that this is something that I have to do in order to play, in order to not let him down, in order to whatever my motivation was. I was like, this is not really a negotiable, right? Same thing when you were a kid, right? Let's say you're 10 years old, your parents was like, hey, you got to go to school, right? You didn't really get to negotiate that. That wasn't something that you were like, well, nah, that's not something that I feel like doing. It was not really an option. You had somebody who told you, hey, this discipline is not even a negotiable, right? So you're going to get your ass up early and you're going to go to the school that you hate to listen to the teacher you don't like. And you're going to stay there for 6, 7, 8 hours of the day, right? There was no choice. When they told you to brush your teeth, this thing that you do every single freaking day, it wasn't something that you decided. It was something that somebody imparted on you, right? So we came to this epiphany this morning because, we were having a tough time, to be quite honest with you, even define, like, we've been in such a mind like hurricane with this, Gil, where we were like, how do you even define discipline? Like, what is the definition of discipline, right? We even looked it up this morning. We're like, what? Gil's like, dude, we've been talking about discipline for a month and a half. Have we even looked it up? And to be quite honest with you, like, what we saw was not what we had all expected. We're like, this doesn't even sound like what we're trying to teach people, right? So here's what we came to the conclusion with, and I don't know if you want to show that the slide, Gil, but the conclusion is simply this: you didn't have discipline before. Somebody imparted that discipline. You had what we call coaches or a mentor or a parent who told you how to be disciplined. So guess what? It's not your fault, right? You never created the right habit. You never found the right skill to have, and the right skill to have is not discipline, right? It's not discipline. Go ahead, Gil.
The truth of the matter is that we're chasing this ideology that we just rented. It was never ours. We never made a decision for many of the things that we did as a child, and we were being coached to be disciplined, right? But something happens along your life. As you go through life, you start losing all your coaches, right? That teacher that was influential to you, your coach when you were in high school, maybe even your mom and dad, as you move on in your life and you move to another era, leaves you. And that discipline, which at one point had consequences imposed by someone else, right, is gone. And we start walking around realizing that we start even accusing ourselves of lacking discipline. And what I would tell you is if we go through this journey together and we're going to go through the steps necessary to actually find success, you have to realize that sometimes we're searching for the wrong answer. And I will tell you, we were victim of that. We realized that discipline is not really what I want to teach you guys. I don't want to be your disciplinary. I don't want the practice of training people to obey rules. It's not what I think is going to get the most success out of you, right? There might be a portion of that, but I'm not going to be in your living room. I'm not going to be in your kitchen. I'm not going to follow you around 24 hours to ensure that the code of behavior you're doing is going to get you to your ultimate self. And if not, use punishment to correct your disobedience.
And it leads into, obviously we're big Tony Robbins, followers and things like that. You got to understand, like, Gil and I have been on this journey for a long time as far as, spending a lot of money to figure out answers on why we do what we do. And, one thing Tony Robbins says is, if you want to change your life, you got to change your standards, right? We're really good at living up to our standards, right? So you ever met somebody who seems to date the same wrong person every single time, right? And you're like, it doesn't matter who it is, right? It's just like it's the same story over and over again. Well, they're living up to their standard of what they believe they deserve, right? They've set a standard, they've set a principle, right? That this is as good as it gets for me, right? So they just meet the standard. So it's a setting of principles. It's something that the reason that some people have, that what you think is discipline, like a Brandon Millich runs triathletes, like he has a standard. Right? He has a standard. He must run a sub 6 minute. Like, this is what he must do in order to meet his standard of excellence. Right? I don't know if you've ever seen, Brandon Milch's one of the rooms in his house, but there's medals everywhere. He set a standard for that. And by the way, his spouse did the same. She's got the same amount of medals too, right? They match standards, right? And it's something that we've been studying for a long time. But here's the hard part, guys. It's like a one-liner is not going to do it, right? If I'm just like, hey, if you want to change your life, raise your standards. And you're like, okay, well, how do I do that? It sounds simple, right? But how do I raise those standards? And this is something, once again, Gil and I started going back and forth with. And to kind of harp on the story, like one of the things I likened to the earlier was, my coach said, you got to come work out. Right. And it's not something that I wanted to do, but when you start doing certain things, and the reason you have discipline in some things is that you started doing things, and over time you figured out your why. You figured out why doing those things had a benefit. And we'll touch a little bit more on that. I don't want to jump the gun, Gil.
Let's just stay and why this discipline is so hard, right? All of you guys want to have some more discipline, right? Let me ask you guys, what would you want if you could have more discipline in something? What would it be? This is where you unmute yourself and you participate. So if there was one thing, and if you want to jump in the front of the room too, I don't give a shit. But like, I need to hear, like, if there was one thing you could be more disciplined, what would it be?
One thing I'll say, and Gil, you called me out on this, is I start something and I'm really excited about it. And then, the excitement kind of dies out. So my interest dies out on it. And then I'm moving on to the next best thing. So if I could stay disciplined on something, it would be just sticking through, not even if I don't have the same excitement in the beginning of whatever project I'm working on, or a specific niche or something that I'm focused on in my business, just going through it and embracing, like Brandon says, embracing the suck.
All right, well, listen, I'm going to tell you guys, and some of you guys have your schedule on there. And someone said, I want my nutrition to be better. But what I'm telling you guys, and the journey we're going to take through this, is that you're thinking that motivation is going to get you through that. Your discipline doesn't die out. Your motivation dies out. And when you're acting upon motivation, right, that's not going to sustain you in your identity. So that's not going to sustain you long term. And this is why I'm so adamant that we start changing the way we start talking about certain things, because, a lot of us, you guys hear about Bobby and I journey and Tony Robbins, and you're like, oh, those guys are on fire. They're motivated. And, it's not true. It just isn't true. Like, I've tested Bobby many times if I can motivate him to do something, and it never fucking works. Right. I'll give you an example. We're drinking in Cabo, and I like tequila. We're drinking big bottles of tequila, and Bobby's like, I'm not drinking tequila. I'm not doing that. Right. So I actually get this really big guy named Blair. He's like 6'3", like Arnold Schwarzenegger looking dude. And I'm thinking, like, he's going to walk over to Bobby and he's going to, really motivate this guy to do it, because he's going to look down at him and like, come on, Bobby, you drink with us. And Bobby's like, nope. He was almost shifted. I was almost surprised. But he's like, no, not doing that. And motivate him to do something outside of his identity, right? Of what he feels is right or wrong, right? But the challenge is, early on, there's someone there to tell you what is right and wrong. And as a child or as a coach, what is our best mechanism to make sure you do something? Consequence. You do that, and this is going to happen, right? I'm going to turn off the internet. That's how we punish kids, right? Like, turn off your internet. My wife took the plugs away from their cell phones. I was like, well, you got about 43 minutes worth of pleasure left, and then that's it. No more chargers, right? When I grew up, it was an ass whipping, right? There was a consequence for that behavior. But you know what I've never really done effectively? I've never pulled the belt out on myself. So I've realized that discipline is actually not the answer. So if you're failing in something right now, it's not your fault. Victor, you're not going to go get a belt and beat your ass, right? Right? Although we probably should. We probably should. Didn't make my call today. Motherfucker, let me get my belt. Start beating the shit out of yourself. But it's not likely, right? Because we're chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and it's funny in that example, going back to setting certain principles, right? Like, and consequences. See, that guy couldn't convince me to do a shot. One, because I'm not motivated by ego, right? Because Gil's like, dude, you're not very motivated by ego. I'm not. Like, if we're just playing an ego game, like, you're not going to motivate me. Like, just so I can show you that I can drink more than you. I'm like, I don't even know what I win there besides throwing up in the bathroom, right? Which, matter of fact, is the consequence to me drinking several shots of tequila for the sake of showing some big monstrous, college frat looking dude that I can drink more than him, right? But I've gone through that before, right? And I know what the consequences are. And that's really how we learned a lot of what we consider to be discipline. Is we had consequences, right? And I was talking to Gil about this morning, which is like, they're sometimes when the things that we do, and this is why this is hard, right? The thing that we're going to talk to you about today is hard because consequences often don't show up immediately. It's not like when you were a kid, right? Like I was telling Gil this morning, like when I was a kid, like I knew I could test my mother. Like my mom's soft, right? So I tried my mom, like no problem. But the minute that she said, I'm going to tell your dad, I knew consequences were coming, right? I knew consequences, and they were going to come. And then and I was scared of dad. I wasn't scared of my mom, right? And so, well, what happens in life and as we grow older, a lot of our consequences are delayed, right? I talked a lot about building wealth, right? And I say that building wealth is a long game. And the hard part about building wealth, guys, is that you're not going to feel that pain for another 20 years. If you don't start investing right now, guys, if you don't start building your EXP organization, guys, if you don't take advantage of the opportunity that we have, if you don't decide to invest in EXP stock when it went down some today, when all stocks are down, and maybe you should put some money in right now, the consequence is not going to be felt tomorrow. You see, the consequence is going to be felt 5 years from now. It's going to be felt 10 years from now.
Hi, this message is for Gina. My name is Charlie, and I was reaching out to you regarding your recent online request for information for Del Reps on Bridge. If you would, at your convenience, return my call at 407-832-7295. Look forward to speaking to you.
Let's meet Charlie. Hey,
He's
Charlie.
gone.
Okay, he's gone. Got it. So this is the tough part about the things that we're doing right now, and especially in real estate. I'm telling you right now, because one, like Gil said, it's not your fault. See, you were borrowing discipline before. You were leasing it from your coaches before. You were leasing it from your teacher, your mom, your dad, your grandparent, your older brother, your older sister. It wasn't yours. Okay. That's number one. Number two is that consequences in the things that we're trying to build right now at this stage of our lives happen later, right? This real estate thing that you're doing right now, as many of you new agents know, is not an immediate thing, right? You've got to realize you're building a business, right? We were having this talk yesterday, Gil, where we were talking to Julie Mar, and Julie Mar's like, hey, I really want to build a team. And Gil's like, great, let's we're going to set up a call, and we're going to do a coaching session on how to build teams. And I remember Andrew Brooks talking about the fact that it's like, hey man, it took a while for this team thing we were doing. We were throwing some things up against the wall, but now it's starting to work. And I was like, guys, you have to have the right expectation. The expectation is that when you build a team, the same way you build your real estate business, it's like building a business. Do you guys realize that most businesses fail within the first 5 years? Matter of fact, most of them fail within the first 2 years, right? So having that right expectation that you're doing things today that will pay off down the road, and you have to continue to do them until.
Looks like we lost him. So
we're going to start teaching today is the fact that you have to stick with it long enough to break through, right, Gil?
Yeah, I think that we have to disassociate something real fast. Before we go to the next slide, I really want to disassociate something, and then I'm going to put a twist on it, right? So through discipline, we find pain, right? That's what we were taught as children, is that if there's if you don't do what you're supposed to do, there's a consequence, and that consequence is pain, right? So that's the association that we're mind fucked by right now, right? but we're adults now and we have some control. So there's a second level that we're going to go through right now as we go through this journey on how to get past this and how to implement the things that Bobby and I do and a lot of leaders do that are actually the true building blocks of success, right? So if on a very elementary level, you're fundamentally working on discipline, right? And because you're disciplined, you start finding some pleasure. Hey, I start getting good grades, my parents give me more attention. I start making my beds, my parents stop yelling at me, right? I start lifting weights, and guess what? I start getting bigger. In the beginning, the only motivation is the consequence. And then we have to, but as we evolve, we have to go to the next step, right? And that next step is self-discipline. And in self-discipline, we're going to open up the definition in just a second. You're going to realize that things change. It's not just about consequences anymore. And if you can get to this spot, I'm going to tell you that you're going to be a leader. You're going to win at a high level, right? But let's just talk about that. So it is the ability, if I can clear out all these screens here. Self-discipline is the ability to make yourself do what you should do when you should do it, whether you feel like it or not. I should make my calls every day, right, Arturo? I should set appointments. I should be in someone's house talking to them about the 2 questions, right? I should be going through and examining what is necessary and doing it whether I feel like it or I don't. For some of you guys may know, I start at 75 hard. And let me just tell you, I'm going to give you my first, and I want to tell you my feelings about 75 hard in my very elementary portion. It sucks. It's fucking terrible. I don't even recommend it, to be very frank with you. It is not pleasurable. It is another burden on my schedule. But like many things, it starts off a little bit in your mind, a little dirty, right? It just doesn't feel right. You're out of pattern, right? But that's where growth happens, through dirt, right? You can't plant a flower without dirt. And there's going to be a time period where you're not going to see any results, where that plant is actually breaking through the seed, but it hasn't broken through the dirt. And that's kind of where I am right now. And self-discipline means that no one's there cracking a whip anymore. No one's yelling at me. And by the way, here's the funny part about it. If I don't read my 10 pages, if I don't do a workout inside and outside, if I don't commit to my thing, if I don't do my favorite things, which is cookies, cakes, and ice creams, no one's going to know. Except I will. And that is the next level of success, is getting that self-discipline. Go ahead, Bobby.
And so this is really important. We want to go back to the fact that this is not your fault, right? You look at some people and you say, well, they have all this discipline on certain things, and maybe they do. And some of them have self-discipline, but you didn't have this amazing motivation prior to you going to school and doing the workouts and going to football practice or going to soccer or softball practice. And you didn't have all sorts of motivation. You had somebody that said, this is what you must do. So it's not your fault that you did not build this muscle. Okay. So, but let me tell you what happened. And let me tell you the benefit of having a coach like that at the beginning of your life is that, I'll liken it back to the example of working out. See, I didn't really even know that I needed to work out, right? Like it wasn't something on my radar. Like when I was in 8th grade, when I was 14 years old, I wasn't like, man, I can't wait to get in the gym, right? It was a coach that was like, hey man, if you're going to play, you're going to work out in this gym. I work at the high school. You need to come up here and start working out. Now, did it suck? Hell yeah. First of all, I'm some scrawny kid coming into a high school gym when there's cats with like big plates all next to me and they're pumping them. They're looking at me like, who the hell is this middle schooler coming in here? And I'm putting little 5s on each side, like, trying to be cool, like lifting stuff. Right. So there was a lot of pain associated with it. There was a lot, hey man, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't even know how to use these machines. This hurts. Right. And so You fight through it because somebody stayed on top of you to fight through. I didn't have an option to do it, but this is what happens. And this is where the breakthrough happens, is you go through enough of the dirt where you start seeing the benefit, right? You start realizing why that shitty action is actually making your life better. So for me, it was like, oh shit, I'm kind of getting stronger, which is helping my football. Oh, hey, girls are starting to say that my shoulders look big. Oh, I like that. All these different things. I'm starting to get more respect from the other players on my team. Whatever it was, my coach is starting to think higher of me. And once you start feeling the benefit after you go through that dirt, then it starts to become something that is kind of a non-negotiable for you, right? Like this, by the way, this all started by Gil coming to me and saying, man, I think there's something I'm not teaching. Because, my belief, and this is Gil saying this, he's like, my belief is if I find somebody who was successful at something before, I can help them be successful in real estate, right? So if they had what we thought was discipline to do something before, then we can bring them into the real estate realm, and then we can teach them to have that same kind of discipline, or we can just transfer that same discipline into this. Now, in thinking about it, what all that happened with some of these top producers in the office was they did a bunch of shit they didn't like long enough to know what the result was, right? So we used Corinne as an example. Corinne had great success in the insurance side of things, right? Guess what? I'm sure making the calls initially for those insurance clients and stuff, Gil, like was not fun. She didn't like the rejection. She didn't like that. But what happened was she stuck through it long enough to start making some money, right? And then she saw the result. And then they might have given her an award at work. And then she started feeling better about it. And then she started to say, hey, you know what? This making calls thing, this kind of being on top of prospecting, this working on building rapport with people has a direct benefit. There's a pleasure that comes with it right now. And then something shifted in her where it no longer becomes hard to do those things, right? And you're like, oh man, she's just not scared. No, she just went past the dirty part of the portion, what we like to call that lower part of the exponential curve. So as you guys know, exponential curves kind of go like this, right? Yeah. And in that part where it's moving so slow and you're getting the rejection or you're not getting the big results you expect, that's the part that people won't make it through unless they have this self-discipline thing, Gil.
Yeah, I got to tell you, like, this is where it starts getting exciting to me, because in your journey, right? And I'm watching some of you guys. I'll give you some kudos. He's not where he wants to be, right? But he doesn't have a clear idea of what that curve looks like yet. And he doesn't know where he's at. Because see, here's the deal. As I go through this and I go, well, this part and this part, this part and this part look pretty fucking similar. And they smell the same. It smells like shit. It sucks, right? Here's what happens. He's got to go home to his wife. Hey, baby, how's it going? Maybe she went to work that way. She's fucking tired. She's working. Hey, did you do a sale today? Nope. Did I do a sale today? Nope. Picks up the baby. Did you do a sale? It's like, hey, Bobby, can we go to blah, blah, blah? It's like, oh, no, we don't do that yet. It's like, no. Because he's in the suck portion. But I'm telling you guys, it's so easy for me to see, because I've seen hundreds and hundreds of agents and thousands of agents actually go through this progression, that right there, what some people consider the 3 feet from gold, right, is where it starts feeling good. It's that pleasure portion. And you got to go through some pain to pleasure. So when you're in the stuck and it sucks, know you're getting close, right? So one of the things that I'm going to be teaching, and I want to make sure that you guys are focused on, is that we don't have to run from that pain. We should actually run towards the pain. You've heard a lot of people say it, and I don't think people say it right sometimes. It's like fail forward. I don't fucking want to fail, but I do. Most of the successes I've ever had have come through failing often, right? And I may not lament in some of my failures because I'm going to keep pushing forward and keep pushing forward. And I've often had the saying, it's like, I've got tons of haters, right? But as long as I keep moving forward, it's very hard to stab somebody in the back if they're moving forward. It's not until you stop and you start questioning yourself, is this really worth it, that you actually start really feeling the pain. Because when you start running, I'll give you a perfect example. How many of you guys wake up at 4:30 in the morning, just get out of your bed, and just run? I don't do it. And I'm gonna tell you why. I want to have my little coffee. I want to like warm myself into it. But you know what's funny? On the times that I've actually done it and just went out there and run, my body warms up. And then I come back and have my coffee and it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I've already like knocked out a few things already. And I'm feeling fucking good. Through that pain comes pleasure. But self-discipline is the ability to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it until the job gets done, right? It's the ability to make yourself do what you should do. What should you do? What should you do? It's not hard to figure that out. Look around, look at your bank account, look at your love bank, right? You know what? My wife loves when I send her fucking flower. She doesn't know it, but I'm sending her to Ritz-Carlton this weekend and she's gonna have a little spa time. That takes a little bit of pain for me to go through and do some fucking work. Get up in the morning, follow my sequences and get shit done, right? Because I see the pleasure that comes from that. I don't need someone cracking the whip. So you know who needs people cracking the whip? Slaves. Because they're bound by somebody else's motivation. And I'm going to tell you something about yourselves. You're entrepreneurs because you don't want to be anybody's fucking slave. Am I right?
Amen to that. And to add on to that, Gil, it's not only that through the pain comes pleasure, but through the pain comes confidence. And confidence is one of the most powerful forces on this earth, right? And you look at people and you think they either got it or they don't. No, they just went through more and they came out the other side more, right? So, when you guys are in that pain portion of the program, when you guys are saying, hey, look, I'm going to get up every morning. I'm going to do these workouts. I'm going to start my calls at 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm going to start making my calls and reaching out to people. I'm going to start doing all these things. I want you to start thinking that with every action you build confidence, right? Because I look back at my life, look back at your life. And a lot of you guys have had some trials and tribulations, right? On all ends of the spectrum. Some of them are, I bet you if I had everybody's story on here, we'd hear some things that we're like, crazy. I remember hearing Rachel Dean's story the first time about this car accident she got in, how the car rolled over on her and she laid in a field for 6 hours. And luckily, like somebody saw her, right? You've gone through something and you've come out the other side. And you guys can all look back at one of these things in your life and you can't tell me that you're not stronger or more confident because of it, because you survived, because you came out the other side. I often, once again, one of my fears is that as we sit up here, in front of the classroom, as we teach you guys, that you guys think that we didn't go through some things, right? That we just woke up one day and, Gil's a fantastic speaker and coach and he's a successful guy. Like, holy crap, guys. Like, you don't want to hear some of the stuff that I know about Gil Ramos and he knows about me. I was talking with somebody the other day about how, they were really challenged about, having to file bankruptcy. I was like, dude, I did that at 29, bro. Like I remember being there. I literally was like, oh, they're coming to get my car, because, if you own something, they'll take it. If you got a loan on it, they might let you keep making the payments on it. But once you own an asset, and I had paid off my car. So here I was in my window watching the truck come in and pull out my SUV. And I was like, oh man, this is a little shot to my confidence. Right. But guess what? Here I am, about over 10 years later. And I could tell you right now that it's made me stronger and more confident. Like, some of the stuff we've gone through in the last 5-6 years, me and Gil, I probably couldn't handle emotionally and mentally if I hadn't gone through a shitty portion of the program and come out the other side. When Gil came up to me one day and it's like, hey man, if we don't put this money down on this property in Paramore, we're going to lose all of our money. Like, can you find this money? Can we make this happen? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, But you know what? I've been through crazy situations like that before. And, and I've been through them with people way less capable than Gil Ramos, and Gil Ramos is the guy that delivers. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes you got to go all in, right? You got to pull your chips in. But I wouldn't know and be prepared to do something like that unless I had been down on chips before, if I had lost everything before and knew what it took to get back up. So, Gil, take it from here.
So let me transition the thought here. So you might be thinking to yourself right now, yeah, I need self-discipline, right? How the fuck do I do that? I'm going to tell you that that's not true either. It's the wrong question. It's the wrong answer. I mean, not for what I want from you guys. If you guys don't know this, the name of my company is Unlimited Prosperity Group, right? And when I created my company and I wanted to help people create unlimited opportunities, right? I actually was sitting in my office in Georgia one day, and I was away from my family, and I was really troubled by the fact that I was there. And I made a commitment to myself, and I actually wrote it in those big fat markers with a big fat tip. Maybe you guys some are graffiti artists in the thing. I had one of those in was called a Phillips 44 or something like that. And I wrote on the wall in permanent ink, am I better than I was yesterday? And are those around me better because I am here? And I promised myself the moment that ceased to be true, I'm going home. I was done. I'm not doing this anymore. By the way, I still live by that commitment, right? So that's why I'm always looking to grow the people around me. So it's important to me, right? That we don't just try to act on discipline. That we find the final step besides self-discipline, because there's something that comes in that spot when you are running and you are going out there and you're pushing your body and you go just a little bit more and just a little bit more, where you start getting to this euphoria. And some of you guys have had this before. It doesn't just happen in working out. When you know you're doing it right? When things are just starting to work and you start getting in your groove. Jasmine, you're making your freaking calls and you're just like, oh yeah, bring the next one. Yep, I got this, right? And you're in your groove and you're making things happen and it's just working. How do we make that happen every day? How does that become who we are? Because it's way more powerful. Let me just tell you what's even more powerful than consequence. And I'm gonna tell you a story about my daughter. My youngest daughter, when you have 6 kids, you get to fix some stuff, right? So like, I feel like my first kid, I wish I could have started over and done some of the things that I do with my last 2 kids, right? When they were young, both my youngest kids, they're twins, and one of them has autism, and he didn't talk until he was like 4.5 years old, but I was talking in his ear every single day, and I gave them, their I ams. I decided I wasn't going to give them the consequence. I was going to give them their I ams. And I told my daughter and I told my son, and each one of them have their own, but with my daughter, I was like, you're smart, you're beautiful, and you're a Latina strong. And that was the genesis of our affirmations. We added some more because I was doing something different with my son, and he's like, well, I want those too. Like, it's not cool. He's my twin. He's not gonna have more than me, right? So my son, I wanted him to know he was loved, right? And that he was a leader of men. She's like, well, I'm going to be loved and I'm going to be a leader of men, right? So now she says all 5, right? But the one I felt like she always really, really gravitated was, I am Latina strong. And somewhere along her life, she realized, she decided, I don't like fucking medicine. I'm not taking medicine, and there's nothing you're going to do that, right? And she will not take medicine. Like, I remember, like, she had ear infection, her ears hurting. I'm talking her through this, and we typed of medicine. She's like, nope, not doing it. I bring her to the doctor, and the doctor's the guru's like, well, sir, we have better ways of doing this. We can show you how to do it. Nope, she beat him too. She was not taking that medicine. That ear was hurting her. She was not doing it. And I'm like, hey, baby, I looked at her right now. I was like, you don't want to take the medicine, that's cool, but you're going to take a shot. And she's like, okay, I'll take the shot. Like, didn't even grimace, 3.5 years old. And she's like, take the shot. So I bring her to the doctor's office. My wife doesn't want to go because she's like, she doesn't want to see the suffering. And she's like, and I'm like, hey, that's the doctor's office right there. When we go in there, they're going to end up giving you a shot. She's like, okay. She shows me her leg. I was like, hey, where do you want the shot? She shows me her leg. She goes, right here. She points at the thigh. She's like, take the shot. Doctor's like dumbfounded that this child is actually accepting to take this shot. So she takes it out, shows him the needle, the whole thing. We're trying to fucking scare her out of this decision. Not going to work. She's Latina strong. She takes a shot, boom, looks me right in the eyes. It happens. She's like, but it hurts. And she breaks down and cries, and she goes through. And we've also find out that, unfortunately, this is not a one-time shot. We got to come back for 3 days straight. So there's 2 more days of this. So the next day, she got a Band-Aid still on there, little Mary Poppins Band-Aids on her leg. And she's like, this leg. And she takes the shot, and she winces. She cries again. She can't hold it back. And we go back to the 3rd day, and she takes that shot, right? And we make it through, and she feels better. But a year goes by, and here comes this fucking ear infection again. And it's hurting her. Now she's got it on both sides. We're going to have to go take the shot. And now she's reconsidering whether she wants to take the shot. And I didn't realize that she was more afraid of the medicine orally. And I was like, baby, why don't you take I don't want to. I don't want to do it. And she's like, and I was like, but you're Latina strong. And she blew up crying. She blew up crying because she realized that at that moment, there was something that was happening that was fighting with her identity. She couldn't live with her in the same moment of having the fear of taking the medicine or taking the shot and her identity as a Latina strong. And it broke her down. And I fucking had to like I'd put her in the bathtub, like calm her down, like self-therapy and talk her through it. And I'm like, just say it. And she didn't want to say it anymore. She didn't want to say she was Latina strong. And I finally got her to say it. And she goes, I'm Latina strong, but I'm scared. And I'm like, it's okay to be scared, but we do it anyway. I want to tell you, she took the medicine. My wife actually came in, found some other medicine we were taking. We figured that shit out because we were not going to stop. She had to break through that, not because the consequence, she was willing to take the consequence. Consequence wasn't enough anymore. There was something biblical happening inside herself and her soul that made it so there was nothing that was going to stop her from being who she is. And it tortured her. Could you imagine, like your identity, who you are, and someone trying to tell you you're not? Like I joke and I say, could you imagine Fat Bobby? Could you imagine Fat Bobby? Like, I don't know. I can't imagine it because you know why? Because Bobby has an identity. I am an athlete. I'm athletic. Jasmine has identity. I am a strong bitch. Like, I am nobody's gonna fuck up with me. I am going to do whatever it takes. I don't need anybody. I'm going to make it through it. I don't know if she wants me to call her out on that, but that's what that's her identity. I would be like shocked to see her like back off on a battle, right? Because she's strong. That's her identity, right? And there are some people who have created an identity that when something comes in the way of their identity, it's immediately rejected. I don't want you to have discipline. If we can get you to self-discipline, that's great. But Brendan Millick is a fucking athlete, right? And he doesn't need the medals to prove it to himself. Dude, that's for the world, right? That's for the world to see. And if I can get you to the spot where you understand, you start believing. And by the way, how did my daughter at 3.5 years old start believing that she was Latina strong? How does my son, who by the way didn't speak till 4.5 years old, never looked at my wife, wouldn't look at her in the eyes, never called her mommy till 5 years old, the first words out of his fucking mouth, I'm changing his clothes, and one day he looks at me, and this kid never said a word to me in his life. I actually took him to get his ears checked because I was praying he was deaf. Could you imagine taking your son to go to the doctor's office and you don't know what's wrong with him, so you're praying? They put you in a sound shelter and they put this little sound in his ear, and I'm praying that he's deaf because I could handle that better. He wasn't deaf, so. Transfer a few months later, one day he just walks up to me. I'm changing his clothes. He says, how do I become a leader of men? And as a grown man, I did the only thing a grown man can do I fucking cried like a little baby. My son spoke for the first time, but he spoke with a certainty that he wanted to make his identity. And it was so powerful to him that there was the first words he said. How do I become a leader of men? Your identity first happens with your I am. It is the biggest gift you've ever received. What are you telling yourself who you are? Are you saying, oh, I'm lazy. I'm a procrastinator. I don't know how to make the calls. I'm not made for this. I don't want to be a salesperson. And maybe it's time for you to redefine your I am. Maybe it's time for you to understand that there's something way beyond discipline, and it's spiritual. And it will bring you to a level of abundance. Just like my Father who created me, and I am a father, I want the absolute best for my children. And I want the absolute best for you. So I hope that you guys can take this and understand what is necessary is for you to become who you are. And who you are is just whatever you end off after the words I am. So I would take this moment right now and ask you guys, if there's a piece of paper by you and there's a pen by you, start writing down who you are. And the genesis of that is a decision. I'm going to go through 7 steps on how to create your I am and how to become a self-discipline. But you get to choose whatever is at the end of those 2 words. And it's anything you want. You could be Latino strong. You could be an athlete. You could be the best fucking realtor ever. You could stand on stage and do what I do. I didn't start this way. I wasn't I wasn't a good speaker. I had to learn this shit.
Tell them that story when they called you up in front of to do the speech in front of the stage at one of the companies you were with, and you did the whole profit soar speech. You're like, hey, they called you.
Yeah. So this was my first speech. It was for a company, and I was doing really well, but I wasn't a speaker. Turned out to be not that bad. But everybody came up there, and I was in a room for the first time in my life, and I was the worst person in the room in my mind, right? I was in a room, I was for Zip Realty. It was my early real estate career. I was a director of real estate for this company, publicly traded. There was 33 directors in the country, and I was one of them. And as you walk into a room, at least for me, I sized up and I sized small. I was not the smartest person in the room by any standard, and I damn sure wasn't the most experienced, and I didn't have the most credentials. So they asked everyone from time to time to speak on what it would take to change the company. And I lamented walking to the front. I probably dragged my feet up there, but this was my speech. If we can raise revenues and lower expenses, profits should soar. And I sat down. Now, everybody before me had did like a 30-minute PowerPoint, stuff like that. But that was all I had. Somehow that got an applause.
It reminds me of something too, guys. So if you're not picking up what we're putting down, it's this, that there has to come a point through repetition that you decide that it's your identity to be the person that you want to be, so that it no longer becomes a decision, right? It no longer becomes something you have to choose from. Hey, should I be disciplined today? Should I do this today? Your identity won't allow you to do it, right? Once you decide who you are, once you build who you are, there is not shaking that. There is no loss of motivation. You don't need motivation. I mean, motivation is great. I love it. I tell Gil, sometimes people say something to me. He knows I like to prove people wrong, but that isn't. I was gonna deliver regardless. It just gives me a little boost. I like people when people doubt me or people doubt what we're doing, or people say something shitty about EXP. I'm like, okay, we gonna see, but But regardless of whether that person showed up or not, I was going to do it anyway, right? Because of the vision that I have for myself. I remember Tony Robbins saying, something to the effect of, somebody saying something to him like, it must be nice to, be 6'7", do this, have all this stuff. And he was kind of like, fuck you, man. I built this Tony Robbins motherfucker. Like, he literally says that on stage. He's like, I built this Tony Robbins motherfucker. Like, Tony Robbins wasn't a great speaker from day one. He wasn't all that stuff. He took certain actions to develop a certain armor. And that's what failure and pain is to me. It builds an armor so that when punches are thrown at you, just like, bing, bing, deflect, right? They're going to be bullets thrown. It just becomes part of who you are. That armor is who you are. I'll give you, I'm going to be surprised as you to see Gil's 7 steps for this, but I'm going to give him a couple of tools that I thought about. One thing that, like even Tony Robbins did was kind of change his name a little bit, right? Like, you can become whoever you want to be, right? Like we even in the Tony Robbins seminars, he actually asked some of the people in the audience to be like, who are suffering that, aren't really being who they are. Like who's the fun, vivacious person? And what's her name? And they come up with a name. They're like, and he's like, what's her name? What's her name? And, the people in the audience is like, her name is Star. And he's like, great. Okay. So how would Star act in this situation? How would she walk up to somebody and speak to them, And so if you guys know something about me, it's like, I love AKAs. I love giving myself different names that give me a new identity. So, remember Gil, one of my first deals when I joined, remember I went through this journey again, just like your guys is going through. Remember, I restarted my real estate career. I wasn't really a professional realtor before I got here 6-7 years ago. And one of my first deals was, a listing, and I was really scared about delivering. Like, that's one of my fears, is not living up to my potential or not living up to what people, desire of me. So I was like, man, what's up? Right. So we went through this whole thing. Gil helped me get the listing, finally got this thing sold, made a ton of money. Right. And when I got that check, when I got multiple checks for selling this high-end home, right, from selling other homes that I met through the people in the open house, I realized I like big checks, right? I like doing big deals. And Gil will tell you, I walked into Gil's office one day and I said, hey, from now on, I want you to call me Big Deal Bob. I'm like, I just want to do big fucking deals, Gil. Like, I like this shit. Like, I don't want to do $150,000 deals. I'm like 700 and up. Like, that's what I want to do, and I created a new identity for myself, to the point that I believe that simple action, I believe if you look at my average closing prices, that they're probably higher than the norm, right? Like, I just closed one for 660. It just became a standard that, hey, this is what I do, man. I close big fucking deals. Like that. I'm Big Deal Bob. Right. So I challenge yourself while you're writing who you are to come up with a name for yourself. Like, what's your AKA, right? Like, who are you going to be? Okay. I'll give you one more tool that I use all the time. Right. And Gil will tell you this. He doesn't know I'm doing it. He thinks I'm just being really conservative. Right. He'll sometimes be like, man, you're so practical, or you're so conservative. You don't take these risks. Right. And the reason is because, and I just realized that even through this teaching is that when I lost my coaches, just like you lost your coaches and your motivators and your teachers and your parents from making you do things, right? Or giving you the consequences of not doing things. When consequences stopped, like Gil said, I didn't like just start beating my own ass, right? But here's what I started to do. And this is a concept that I actually wanted to write about like 10 years ago. And I call it consequential thinking. Okay. Consequential thinking, meaning whenever I look at doing an action, I actually think about what it looks like 5 or 6 steps after that, or not taking an action, right? Being able to visualize what life looks like if I do this, right? So Gil might think I'm not taking this risk, but what I'm really doing is saying, well, if we do this, these are the 5 scenarios that could happen. And if this scenario happens, how will I be? It's like you have some friends, right, that might have taken the easy route to make money, like selling drugs, right? And it seemed really good at the time, right? But if they had thought about the consequences, even if they were like, dude, I can make 50 grand a week doing this. Yeah, but let me ask you this. If that led you to spend 20 years in jail, would the 50 grand be worth it? Right? And that's a consequential thought. That's like, hey, I have to look past this action I'm thinking about taking and think about what the consequences are or not doing it, right? If Gil doesn't complete 75 hard, he has the only thing that's going to keep Gil in my standards is not in terrible shape, right? He doesn't have to do 75 hard to potentially lose weight. What's going to happen is Gil's going to run into this dark place, right? Where he's going to think about missing a day. And he's going to have to think about what it feels like to not accomplish his goal, what it feels like to have to go to his wife, who already told him that she didn't think that he would finish it, to have to come and tell her you're right. And he has to picture what that's about. He has to feel the shame that he's going to feel when he has to walk up. That's consequential thinking. He's thinking about the pain prior to the pain being there to keep him in the suck long enough to get the pleasure of it. Because once you get to the pleasure, guys, it's not that fucking hard. Like I could tell you right now, like if you guys are having a tough time working out, trust me, it gets easier. Once you get the results, it gets easier. You know what I'm saying? If you guys were to do, even if you didn't do 75 hard, but for 75 days, you committed to do some form of exercise and maybe eat a third less of the portions that you eat, you're probably going to lose at least 20 to 25 pounds. And you're going to start getting compliments. And you're going to start looking and feeling better. You're going to put on that tight dress that you hadn't worn for 5-6 years. You're going to do all that. And guess what? It ain't going to be that tough to go work out on Monday or Sunday or Saturday, because it now becomes part of you, becomes your I am. I am fit. I stay fit. I don't have to get ready because I stay ready, right? So Gil, tell them the step.
I think, I'll end it with this portion here. And if you guys have ever been to a Tony Robbins, he talks about the Dickens principle, right? And if you guys have seen the movie, what is that? What's that Christmas movie they play every year? With the Ghost of Christmas Past?
Is it not
A Christmas Carol?
The Christmas Carol, right? And if you think that that's a Christmas movie, you're dead wrong, right? That is not a Christmas movie. That is the power of your I am, right? So if you intensify your shortcomings right now, so like Carla, you mentioned nutrition, right? So if you go through, Carla, the nutrition changes of not changing what you are doing right now, and let's just say, well, what are you going to look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Let's magnify all the things that you're personally challenged right now. Well, what's it going to be like a year from now if you're still not making your phone calls? 2 years down, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. How's that job at Walmart going to feel? Right? So in the Dickens principle, it says, okay, listen, hey, let me show you what your life looks like because of all the people you affected, because you didn't change these things, because you didn't show, mercy to the little kid on, with the broken leg. Like, let me show you what happens in his household. Let me show you how his family, let me show you all the effects of some of the negative things that happened to you. But on the other side of that, you can also imagine all the positive effects of choosing your I am. So, this last slide that we're going through is actually not as much about the I am, because I think that I am is a progression. So I want to get you from thinking the discipline's the answer to self-discipline. And I think you already know the answer for the I am, right? But there's a journey to get there. So here's the journey. So to get to the spot where you are now looking at, like, you know what? I don't need somebody else to create discipline for me, right? And by the way, you damn sure don't need anybody else to create motivation for you, right? Because you already know what you want. And your motivation, by the way, is based on, if you don't know what motivates you, like, just think about what's motivates some other things for you, right? So what I would tell you is, like, in Bobby's situation, he liked that feeling of, having his shoulder look good, having girls compliment him. That already motivated. So a lot of the things that he's going to make are based on some of those motivations. So whatever motivated you before will probably continue to motivate you. So you might want to redefine that portion for yourself, right? So let's go through this self-discipline. And like everything that is worthy, it starts with that decision, right? I think that's what that slide says, right?
Decide what you want.
Yep. Decide what you want. It's decision. It is the genesis of success. It's a decision. It also seems kind of biblical too, right? Like it all started with something, right? And Bobby's house, when you go to and you look on the wall, it was all a dream. Every building you see, every monument you see was seen before it was done. Somebody had to visualize what that looks like, and it happens with a decision. It's probably, if we got rid of all these other 6 steps to create self-discipline, you'd be okay, right? Because the decision you're making right now is not to do it. The decision you're making right now is to avoid the pain. And you probably heard me say this, and it just kind of brought full circle this morning. It's like, hey, you want to make big money? Get yourself some big bills. Because that's enough for some of you guys. It's like, I want to survive. So like, I'll make just enough to pay if you're only going to make just enough to pay your bills, get bigger bills. Get yourself a Tesla bill. Go get yourself a 5-bedroom house with a pool. Get yourself some big stuff. If you're going to live up to whatever your bills are, get bigger bills. Part of your bill is your vacation. Part of your bills is like creating magical moments for your kids, right? If you're going to suffer just into the point of survival, make your survival $50 million. Like, go out there and make a decision that you're going to do what you got to do to find your own personal happiness. It all starts with a decision. And if you guys watched my Monday video, I said there's a certain redemption in the decision. If you make a decision today, you can heal your soul of all of the things that you terrorize yourself. And I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to torment myself, to beat myself up, to think that I'm not good enough, to think that I'm a fraud. I've done all those fucking things too, right? It's not unique. Suffering is not unique. I've done that. But then somewhere along the way, I decided to make a decision of who I am. So.
And to add to that, I'll give you a quick story of when I first started, working when Gil was the broker of Exit Realty. Is I suffered a lot in the first 6 months. First of all, you guys got to understand, I was rebuilding a career again, right? A career that I had built 20 years prior when I was a young, early, 21, 22-year-old in the mortgage business. Starting 100% commission business, as you guys know, takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of energy. It's scary. And I was doing it again in my mid to late 30s again, after I had done it already again, and so I was starting off and, I was going through a lot of the same trials and tribulations, and I was really stressing myself about whether or not I was going to deliver for people, right? Like, am I going to sell this home for this guy? Am I going to actually, deliver for my clients? Do I even know what I'm doing right now? And I literally was dreaming. I felt like I got no breaks from real estate. I think some of you guys might be there too, right? Like, it's like I was thinking about real estate every second of every day, and then I would go to sleep, and then I would dream about real estate, but not in a good way. Like I never actually slept. I was like doing deals and dealing with issues in my sleep. And at some point, about 6 months in, I got physically sick. Like, I just was like, I'm sick. Like, I got the flu, I got something. And I just knew in my heart it was because of the stress that I was putting on myself. And so I came to a crossroads, and I just started talking to myself and saying, okay, well, hold on. If I'm going to play this game of real estate, okay, there's a couple ways I can play it. Well, one thing I can do is I can quit, right? I can end the pain. I can end the pain right now, and I could quit. I decided, because of my identity, that I'm not a quitter. Right. That was a non-negotiable. That was my base level. Like, I'm not a quitter. So that's not even an option. So I'm not quitting real estate. So I'm going to continue to play the game. So I asked myself a question, and this made me make my decision. And I asked myself this: do I do better playing the game when I'm having fun or when I'm miserable? Like, how do I play better? Do I get better results when I'm having fun and I'm enjoying what I'm doing? Or do I get better results when I'm miserable? And I said to myself, well, maybe I can't measure that, but let's say they're equal. Let's say I perform just as good when I'm having a great time and enjoying myself and growing and feeling good about myself than when I do when I'm miserable. And I asked myself this question: so how do you want to play? Which side do I want to be on? Decide, Bobby. Decide what side you want to be on. And I decided I was going to enjoy this game. right? No matter what hits came, no matter that deal that blew up, no matter if what I expected to happen didn't happen, I was going to enjoy playing the game. And that one decision, guys, totally eased the stress off of me. And I just started to play the game with a different flow. I actually started to let the game come to me rather than forcing it and beating myself up over it. And it made every difference in the way that I played the real estate game. So it starts with that decision. Go on, Gil.
So we're going to go through these, and we're going to be ending off at 30 minutes past the hour. But I want you to understand is like you can actually cheat the system, right? This is the steps to become self-disciplined, and it's written by a guy named Brian Tracy. So we're using his stuff. If you want to go back and look up the 7 steps to self-discipline, it's Brian Tracy. It's also the guy who wrote the book, Eat That Frog, right? Knocking out your biggest thing in the morning, your biggest obstacle, right? And getting it done first things first. So if you had to eat a frog, you wouldn't take a frog and say, well, it's live frog. Thinking about, Laura, I want you to imagine this fat frog, right? And I'm going to hand it to you and say, hey, Laura, you eat this frog, I'm going to shoot you in your head. Big consequence, right? So you get this frog and you're like looking at it and like, you're not going to go get yourself a fork and knife and like eat it slowly, right? You're not going to be like, oh, let me just take little nibbles of this damn thing. You're like, all right, if this is going to save my life, the life of my kids, I'm just going to go and eat that frog, right? And that is not discipline. That is self-discipline. So these are 7 steps of self-discipline. So after you've decided what you want, and by the way, you can decide to have more than just one thing, right? You don't have to just have one I am, but you do have to start by writing it down. There's something very, very powerful about, I don't know, I'm going to say scripture, right? Imagine if it was never written down. Imagine if protocols weren't written down. How can McDonald's run a $1 billion company with 15, 16-year-old snot-nosed kids? Because they have a written plan, right? They wrote down, hey, this is what happens when the fryer, like, I mean, I think about Narda. Narda was before she came into real estate, she ran a very successful region for McDonald's, right? They had things that they wrote down, and they were critical to the success. So they decided, hey, we're going to sell more burgers than anyone else. We're not going to sell the best burger, but we're going to sell the most burgers. That's what they decided, right? And they wrote that shit down. And then from there, they set a deadline. We're going to be able to do this by X here. We're going to do this by X here. We're going to do here. And that is progress. It doesn't mean that when you make that decision that overnight, tomorrow, I look like an Adonis, right? It doesn't mean that I made a decision and I'm going to check myself tomorrow. It's not like I'm going to go eat a salad this afternoon. I'm like, whoa, I did it. No, I'm going to put that goal in the future, and I'm also going to celebrate those wins along the way. And by the way, like you can, like I said, you can have more than one thing. Be greedy. God didn't tell me, hey, Gil, you can be good at one thing. He didn't actually tell me that at all. But I'm assuming that he wants me to be good at a lot of different things. Be a good human being. Give back to, they always say it's like too much is given, much is too much. Fuck, I fuck the one up all the time. I gotta give a lot. I owe a lot of blessings, right? For every blessing I get, I give 3 back. Let's put it that way. I'll make my own shit, right? But identify who you want to be. Collaborate in your mind. Like you're allowed to. I always say this like to my kids. It's like it's okay to be selfish, right? Because the more, especially if you have the right mindset, the more I have, the more I can give, right? So allow yourself to want more. Like, I know you want to be healthy, great. I know you want to be wealthy, great. I know you want to be strong, great. But what if you could have everything you wanted? Like, go for it. Make your list. And then organize your list and prioritize your list. But the most, and besides, to me, by the number 1 and the number 6 step are probably the most beautiful steps. Decide what you want and take action, right? And by the way, it doesn't have to be this Herculean action. Like I can imagine, like if Bobby and I are going to work out later this afternoon, like we're not going to go start with 500 pounds today, right? Right, Bobby? We're not doing that, right? Tell me we're not doing that. We're not starting with 500 pounds.
No. We're not starting with 500.
No. but we're going to find a weight and we're going to build on that weight, and we're going to build on that weight, and we're going to build on that weight. And by the way, through that process, we're going to tear some shit up in our muscles. And through that pain, we're going to grow. And we see this in human nature all the time. Don't fight it. This shit's a proven, repeatable system. It is nature at its finest. Through pressure, we create diamonds. So decide what you want, write it down, etch that shit in stone. Make it not only on the paper, but etch it in your soul. You do that through repetition, right? You repeat it to yourself every morning, every night, right? And what happens? You start believing it. And you do it every day, without fail. Even if you don't even see the success yet, even if you don't get to the pleasure portion, you know it's going to happen. You just don't know how long that line's going to be. But there's not one of you that if you actually shot a free throw every single day for as long as it took, you wouldn't at some point get 10 in a row, right? All of you know that if I gave you, hey, here it is. Narda, here's $1 million. All you've got to do is shoot 10 free throws in a row. Now, you can't do that right now. I understand that. You're short. You probably don't play basketball very often, but you're going to build that muscle and you'll be like, swish, 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 miss. Okay, great. Swish, swish, miss. Right? But at some point, you know in your heart, for that $1 million, you're going to get 10 in a row. Hell, if I said you had to get 50 in a row, you'd be in your backyard every single morning. Push, swish, swish, swish. So what I want you to understand is that the consequence will move to pleasure. When you start understanding at the other side of consequence, the other side of pain is the life you deserve, and that starts with a decision, and in your identity, you become. So,
I
almost apologize for thinking that, on a global scale, that we're going to motivate you to being successful. And to some degree it works. I get motivated all the time. I push some things because I'm motivated, right? If I see Bobby's lifting more than I am in the gym today, I'm probably going to try to lift some more, right? But it's either my identity or it's not.
That's right.
The motivation will fail. It's the firecracker, right? So Joshua, don't forget to close with the build conference. Hey, if you guys want,
He's militant. He's militant.
If you want to learn more about this, man, I will tell you, like you hear about me and Bobby talk about Tony Robbins, and that was a decision, right? And I remember telling the guy in the front, I'm like, I was a brand new broker, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, hey man, I'm just walking to you right now because I'm trying to get some of these guys to go, but here's my credit card. I want them to see me that I'm doing this too, but don't charge my credit card today. That's what I told the speaker. I made a decision that no matter what, I was going to move forward with this because I knew there was something better on the other side, and the pain of like spending the money was okay. Because I wanted to be a better leader. I knew I had it inside me. I just didn't know where it was. And I got myself and I walked and we got a car, and I just had my babies right. There was 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't go, right? And we drove down there in my truck. We drove my truck, I think, down there the first time. And we got in there and we went down to see Tony Robbins. And that decision created a lot of new decisions of who I wanted to be. Right. So I would encourage you guys to join us. We're going to be at the Build Conference in August. Bobby and I are so passionate about this. We've bought some extra tickets, and we're willing to do a payment plan for whoever goes from us and say, hey, let's say I need to break this up over 3 payments. I'm totally cool with that. We'll just debit your account for 3 payments. I think the payments are $400, right? If you want a better seat, I think they're $600, right? But like, we just want to see you guys be there, because here's something else is when you're around people who have the spirit of I am, it rubs off, right? So. Bobby, I'm gonna let you end this out here. I'm gonna go back to this screen here because I think it's probably the most important part I want you to get to. It's not about the consequence of someone else telling you. I can whip the leash, and I whip the belt at you, and you'll do something. I'm sure you will, right? But there's something more powerful even than that, than you even grabbing the leash and you beating yourself up. Because we're really good at self-torment. But when you identify yourself as the I am great, my team, we always start with blessings, right? Because from the good, we see some good, we can see more good, right? And we can discount good all the time. But your greatness is sitting inside you waiting to come out. And it starts with that sentence, I am. So Bobby, I'm gonna let you close out. I appreciate all of you guys. I really do. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your loyalty. And I really want to see you guys get to another level. And that's why this intimate Team Up Tuesday was created. It's at your fingertips. It's on your tongue. Now, I will tell you, some of you guys are afraid to say the word I am something. I know that because I was too. I already had built an identity, and it was not a winner. So at first, when I started saying I am, I was like, yeah, right. Come on, Gil. Come on. We know where you came from. Guys like you don't come to this spot. This is for those other people. So have the courage to write down at least 5 I ams.
Can I say what I am?
Wendell, before you jump in, I'm gonna let Bobby close out, and then if there's time, in a few minutes left, we'll do some questions or comments or answers. So, Bobby, I want you to finish this up.
Yeah, I want to end this by saying that perfection is a low standard, and when we're talking about the I am, it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect, right? It just means you're setting a standard. It means you're setting your identity of what you will and won't put up with. There's nobody in this classroom. There's nobody online. There's nobody, me and Gil, who bat 1,000. We don't. So here's the analogy. And this is something my buddy gave me, which I thought was just an incredible analogy. So, when a plane flies from Orlando to Los Angeles, they put this plane on autopilot, right? Because autopilot has sensors that tell you this is the most direct line from Orlando to Los Angeles. This is the absolute best path to get there. What people don't understand is the plane does not fly in a straight line to go there, right? It doesn't. It can't, because there's weather conditions, there's wind, there's different things that are going to come up along the way that knock that plane off that center line to get to Los Angeles. The reason that autopilot is powerful is because it pulls you back to center quicker than anything else, right? This I am is what that is. It's your internal autopilot that gives you a guide and a direction to get back to your center line, to get back to who you really are. Because guess what? There's going to be some days you miss. There's going to be some times when you let yourself down a little bit. The difference between you and the next person that doesn't reach there is how quickly do you get back to center? How quickly do you get back to that I am that you wrote on that page? That's the difference, guys. That's the difference between getting back online and falling off. That's why you see people fall off the wagon. They stay off the wagon because they don't have a strong I am. And that's what Gil gave you today. I'm going to tell you right now, Gil, I thought the story you told me this morning and hearing it again about, what you've done with your kids. I told Gil he should write a book about parenting, but this repetition, literally Gil has been saying, you are a leader of men. I am Latino strong in that young girl's ear since she was born. Okay. So that it becomes ingrained in who she is. And guess what? You don't have your coaches anymore. Hey, Gil's not whispering in your ear per se. We might whisper to you today, right? But we're not going to wake you up in the morning saying that in your ear. So you have to, right? I could tell you right now, I've traveled with Gil all across the country. And he has a morning routine. And, he even sometimes when he feels embarrassed, when I walk in on his morning routine, like he'll be in the bathroom, literally staring at himself, doing affirmations, shouting at himself in the mirror with a recording, telling him that he is, basically an Adonis and a leader and well, guess what? Hey, you know what? He understands he needs that repetition too, because he does not want to doubt 1 second of any day who he is. And you guys got to do the same thing for yourself. You need to wake up every single day and do that. So I will end it with that. I don't know where we're at with time wise.
It's funny. Like, I just want to let you guys know, like, I failed, right? Today we're in Naples, and we're going to go talk to a broker who has a lot of things going for him. And has how many agents, Bobby?
He has about 40 agents.
40 agents. And the other one? Where's the other one?
He has about 200.
Don't think I'm not afraid. Don't think that I'm not challenged. Don't think that I'm going to walk in here and it's going to be an easy shot. And there's probably way more chances of me failing in converting this guy than there is that he will. But I know something he doesn't. I know in my heart it's the right decision for every person. I know that if I don't try, I don't get. So, part of that self-discipline is going beyond that fear. And what I find is sometimes that an opportunity strikes I didn't see before I got there, and it becomes easy. Like, oh man, this is actually easier than I thought. But I usually don't figure that out until I get there. I'm a whale hunter. I knock big shit down. I don't question that about myself. He doesn't know that yet. He will find that out. And I'm going to go out there and do what I've got to do. So I challenge you guys to get past your fears, write down your shit, make shit fucking happen. And I hope to see you guys all at the Build conference. There's no fucking excuse. Get out there and see you there. I'll be speaking at that conference too. It was actually one of the things I wrote down. I want to speak with Tony Robbins. So I appreciate you guys. We got to go. We've got to go knock down some whales, right, Bobby?
Yes, we got to go, guys. I'm sorry. But I hope you got a ton out of it today, guys. And
it's so good to see you guys.
We will see you when you get back.
Love you, love you, love you, love you.
Love you guys.
Be well. I'm so glad you guys went in front. Take care, guys.